If you're using Reclass, then you might want to listen up, because there's a new plugin coming out that has far more meaningfully useful features, fixes a ton of annoying bugs, has a more functional, space-efficient and beautiful design, and for those of you who can't pay for plugins, you can get the full version, I don't mean some watered-down trial version, I mean the full feature list without having to pay for it, making it incredibly accessible to people from all around the world. That all might sound too good to be true, but it's real, it's here, and it's called Elttob Reclass, so let's dive right into it. Starting in the Plugins tab, you'll notice things are different right away. There's a shiny new logo, of course, but the automatic button has gone away, which we'll talk about a bit later. For now, we'll just open the main widget and get a first dose of this wonderful new design. But we're productive, so we're not going to spend time looking at the pretty colours. Instead, we're going to select some instances, and right away the interface springs into life with a bevy of smooth animations, and it looks a little bit different than what you might be used to. That's because Elttob Reclass sports an all-new layout called Suggestion Flow, which is designed to take up as little space as possible. As the name hints at, all of your suggestions flow in from the right, with the most confident suggestion being highlighted in blue. This is far more compact and utilitarian, and as a result, you can resize the widget literally down to the minimum size supported by Roblox Studio, which basically means you can run it anywhere you like. And even with this minified design, there's somehow room to make the search box even bigger, so it's easier to click when you're moving quickly. The convert button is also gone, by the way, so suggestions are now one click, which makes everything just that much quicker. It's a massive design win. Elttob Reclass makes the interface more functional, while fitting into smaller spaces, and looking even more beautiful in the process thanks to the new Sensation design system. Now, it's time for one of the most impressive features on this whole new interface. Watch closely. There's a completely new recommendation algorithm in this plugin, which is insane at interpreting what you type. It's called Intelligent Search, and it works with as few as 2 characters. To be clear, I don't mean 2 characters for some sort of tab auto-completion, I mean the entire search query. It's nuts. The Intelligent Search algorithm now pulls from more data sources than ever before, and as the name suggests, uses them more intelligently. Primarily, it now pulls from phenomenological relationships rather than just literal ones in the API. For example, instead of just comparing API similarity, Intelligent Search now understands components of names, so it can match instances that sound like each other even if they don't have the same implementation. In addition, Intelligent Search now works on complex selections involving instances of different types. Using an API-based algorithm, Intelligent Search will now discover common subsets of functionality to represent your selection when generating suggestions. This means, for the first time, automatic suggestions are compatible with all possible types of selection, so long as you've selected some things you can actually reclass. And if all of that wasn't enough for you, all of this deep analysis is happening incredibly fast, as the interface likes to brag about down in the corner. But the search efficiency gains don't stop at Intelligent Search, because if you're one of those mouse-averse people, the new Elttob Reclass has full keyboard support now, thanks to a feature called Instant Typing. As long as the Reclass widget is open, you can select instances in the Explorer, and without having to click anything else, you can immediately start typing into the search box to choose a new type. From there, you can press Enter to accept the top suggestion, meaning if you bind the Reclass widget to a keyboard shortcut, you can do all of your searching and reclassing right from your keyboard without ever touching the mouse. And even if you are a mouse user, this makes performing multiple reclasses much easier because you don't have to bounce between the widget and the Explorer. By the way, there's plenty more features for keyboard users that'll be coming up, and they're very exciting, so stick around for those, but I'll discuss them later in the video. For now, let's actually reclass some instances and talk about the brand new Reclass engine. Firstly, and yes, I'm going to get this out the way up front, Elttob Reclass works with attributes, it works with tags, and you can undo. Those are some of the biggest pet peeves with Reclass, and they're gone now, so you don't have to worry about them anymore. But surprisingly, that's not the most interesting technological change. You see, there's 2 big features that I think you should be excited about. Firstly, have you ever tried to reclass between a frame and a button, only to have that irrelevant active property get carried over, even though nobody ever wanted that? If that's you, then you'll love that Elttob Reclass does not transfer properties you haven't modified. It'll keep all the things like custom colors that you've set, but it'll leave all the default properties alone, meaning you get more useful and predictable reclasses with exactly the things you actually wanted to keep. What's better is that this is all built on the future isPropertyModified API with graceful fallback functionality, so this feature will actually get more intelligent when those features are released in Roblox Studio. So that's already pretty huge and actually useful. But this next feature is even better. Elttob Reclass introduces a totally new idea, lossless reclassing. Watch this. I'm going to reclass this image to a frame and right back. So what's going on here? Well, if Elttob Reclass can't transfer properties you've modified, it will save those modified properties as attributes instead. And if it detects any saved attributes on the way back, then it reuses them and turns them back into properties, which basically means you can now reclass to anything you want without data loss. And if you forgot to grab a property before you reclass the instance, we've all been there, then you don't have to undo all of your changes just to read a single value. This might sound cheesy, but it's basically reclass insurance. Okay, let's do something stupid. Here's an object value pointing at a regular part. Now I'm going to reclass that part into a truss. This simple scenario trips up most plugins out there, even the old Reclass, because they don't update the instance that the object value is pointing at. This will ruin your day. So why doesn't this work? Well, under the hood, this is a very complicated operation, basically requiring a scan of the whole game, so most plugins don't implement it because it's too technically complex. But of course, that didn't stop Elttob Reclass from going ahead and implementing it anyway. Thanks to whole file reference analysis, Elttob Reclass handles all of these tricky edge cases with ease, making sure that your game isn't left in a corrupt state. So, if you're not using Elttob Reclass and your game is quietly breaking whenever you use Reclass plugins, this is probably why, and you'll be comforted to hear that you don't have to tolerate it anymore. To top all of this off, I'd like to mention that Elttob Reclass has an incredibly comprehensive settings page where you can configure all of this, and even some things I haven't mentioned here, all the way down to the minutiae. For example, you can choose to keep instances around after you reclass them, or you can choose which instances end up being selected. You can narrow the scope of reference analysis, you can choose what parts of instances are transferred over, and you can configure lossless reclassing, and all of the other features we talked about. And it's all explained in plain language, so you don't need a computer science degree to tweak all of it. There's similar pages for intelligent search, instant typing, and the main widget if those are things you're interested in configuring too. There's also pages for two other features that I haven't mentioned yet, and they're by far the most exciting. Remember how I said the automatic button was missing? Well, the entire features had a massive redesign. The main problem with it was just that you didn't see what you were reclassing to, and you couldn't confirm your action or choose an alternative. That's where Reclass Now comes in. Once you've bound Reclass Now to a keyboard shortcut, you can activate it anywhere in Studio. When you have instances selected, it will show the top suggestions in a lightweight interface under your cursor, letting you instantly select it if you so please. Alternatively, if it's not correct, you can choose one of the alternatives, or open the main widget to initiate a wider search. And let me remind you, thanks to instant typing, you can use all of the search functionality entirely from the keyboard. So combined with Reclass Now, you have an absolute beast of a keyboard shortcut. You can basically reclass instantly. Or, I suppose, you can reclass now. Trust me when I say that Reclass Now genuinely changed the way that I work with this plugin. Where previously I'd have to commit to having the whole widget open, now it's just at my fingertips with just the right amount of information presented immediately. It's genuinely game-changing. But fancy fast interfaces aren't just for keyboard aficionados. You see, there's a very similar feature made especially for builders and artists. It's called 3D View, and it's basically Reclass Now, but in your 3D viewport. When you select certain kinds of instances, which you can configure in the settings by the way, you'll see this little toolbar pop up. It automatically positions itself out of the way so it's not distracting, but if you need it, then it contains the same instant options for reclassing. And of course, you can access the main widget from there too, and with instant typing, you can just start looking for something and reclass to something right away. It's just like Reclass Now, but even more convenient, because you don't have to bind it to a keyboard shortcut. I personally like to use this for lights because you're often working with them in the viewport anyway, and it's useful to quickly test out the different light shapes. And of course, in combination with lossless reclassing, I can click through the options at my own leisure, and the shapes of all the different light types are memorized as I deliberate between them. How genius is that? Anyway, I know I've been talking for a long time. For what is ostensibly a simple plugin, Elttob Reclass is anything but. It still has the same dead simple user experience that made the classic Reclass so popular, but for the very first time there's a more professional expression of the same ideas for those of us who spend far too long in studio, what with Reclass Now and 3D View and all the rest of it. Not to sound too marketing-y, but this is actually a generational leap, and it makes the classic Reclass feel, well, ancient. So how can you get your hands on it? Well, I've been thinking a lot recently about international creators who don't have a lot of purchasing power. So there's two things I've done to make sure that Elttob Reclass is more accessible. Firstly, and you'll be glad to hear this, I've dropped the price of Elttob Reclass permanently. It's now a third off forever, because I figured it'd make a better compromise between creator compensation and access for people with less purchasing power. But of course, for some people in regions where money is scarce, wages are low, or exchange rates are poor, any price could be too much. So, after listening carefully to the gritty, realistic feedback I've heard, I decided the only way forward to support these people was to just be open. That's where the idea for Access Anywhere came from. You submit a form to get the software you want, a bunch of applicants get product keys at the end of the month, and they end up with the same software, but without the economic burden they didn't need. So, if that's you, then follow the link in the description. There's a dev forum post that shows you how the process works. Follow the steps, you'll be fine. But for everyone else, you can find the link to the Creator Store page in the description below to get Elttob Reclass right away. Again, I've dropped a third off the price forever, so I hope it's more accessible, and I hope you enjoy it. If you like what you see, then please do leave an honest review with as much praise or criticism as you please. I read every single one of them. Anyway, I've been Dan, and I'll see you all next time. Have fun!